outside the wilderness area.
Yeah. You know, when I started operating, it was how much? I think they were taking was it 10 million board feet of lumber off
It's
the
better
big
than
horn?
debut.
Really.
Now I don't think they take any other than a few salvage sales.
They couldn't get any. You know, the logger went broke over there on the other side of south of 16, where we are, and so they tried to get bids to finish his contract. Couldn't get any bids on it.
Well, there's only one sawmill in Wyoming right now operating.
One.
Yeah. And it's over in the Black Hills.
Is it? Okay, in the northwest corner.
If you crossed the mountain, would you still be in Wyoming?
Over this
Yeah.
mountain? Yep. We're right in the center of the state.
When I was washing my hands down here after I caught a fish, I was kind of where the water was running in, kind of rubbed down in there. Was there ever any gold around here?
You know, the bighorns never have had much for gold or silver.
Yeah.
You know, that's kind of an interesting story. We were camped here, and this guy wandered into our camp. He's got a pack frame on, and he'd come from,
Yeah.
he'd actually started at KC.
I miss Mosby, Jack.
Heard of it. I don't know where that is.
Don
Jack
Mars
Mom's
was his
probably
name, and he lives actually ranched just south of Billings on the Rosebud,
Treating him well?
right around where Custer's
Why?
deal happened and all that.
Yeah.
No,
And,
I don't think so. Because Mosby hated him recently.
He got to
That was
visit, and
summer
I
days, just
invited
when
him
he
in
stuck
for
in that
dinner. He had
stupid
dinner with us,
creek
and then he
all
ended
the
up
time.
staying that
Ashby
night.
didn't put in a card game.
And he sent me some books that he was actually he walked and ran
Hey, Jack.
all the books that he
But he just gets
wrote
so unhappy during
as
the
far
day.
as historical type stuff.
Uh-huh.
And I don't know what the book was that he
So
wrote
that's
for
a
this
Mars.
particular journey, but he wrote one about
I
how
don't know why this is so
I think it was what was it?
fun.
I think it was called the Expedition of 1873, and it was a
I'm
time
kind of
period
with
when
one card in the
economically
stomach,
Montana was having a heck of a time. Early statehood.
Still had a lot of issues too, didn't they?
Oh yeah. Plus the eastern half of Montana was all designated Indian country, by the federal government. And there's a lot of people in western Montana that's already been settled that wanted in there because they knew they wanted to get the resources or whatever. And so what they did is the town of Bozeman and the legislature and the governor got together and, through whatever auspices they could, they put together some money and they put together what they could find of the toughest 150 men that they could find, outdoorsmen. And they put them together with the promise that they're headed to the northern Bighorn Mountains, because there'd been a heck of a gold strike found there. Nobody else knew about it. And then, of course, all these guys were, they'd lose whatever they made over a year in a card game, So, it didn't take too much to convince them to go with them.
Yeah.
So they marched right through all this Indian country. But the whole idea is to get them stirred up, the Indians, the Sioux especially, stirred up so that the federal government would come in and put them down so they could go in there and take their resources. Take the land and all that. But anyway, they made their way all the way through, antagonizing the Indians all the way. What they would do is they'd have a camp, and the Indians would come in after they left. And anything's fair game as far as food, 'cause when you're a survivalist like that. They'd have scraps of food and stuff like that, and they'd put these bombs that they'd bury. And, they'd touch them, they'd go off. And, of course, that made the Indians even madder. They're just scavenging for food is all they're doing. And, anyway, so the Indians started taking shots at them, which they didn't actually hit any of them. But
What year was this in?
I think it was 1873.
They had bombs back then.
But anyway, the whole thing that made him write this book is they had the Indians actually made a try to kill him at one point.
Yeah.
But right on their ranch was there's a hill, and it had these dug-in holes where these guys had sat up there, and they basically annihilated these Indians, from a high spot, just sniping them.
Yeah.
And they're still there. And so he researched the whole part about it. But I mean, what was it? It was
So
a
did they
year or
ever-
two later. Custer
Yeah.
was in there and got wiped out. I
Yeah.
mean, that was what the whole deal was behind Custer's
Kinda.
last stand,
Yeah.
or what got it started. Had nothing to do with the Indians.
Kind
I
of
mean,
interesting. Well, did
they're
anybody
antagonized.
did anybody ever find or look for any gold in? Hey, Andrew, are
Oh,
you gonna
yeah,
go get a
they-
jacket?
There's all
No, I'm
kinds
going
of,
to get some
they
bark.
dug
Okay.
all over this mountain looking for gold, but they didn't find much.
Yeah.
There was a Roy Bean that was a mountain man out of Montana. He's not the judge from
Yeah,
Texas.
not the
you
one.
know.
I was gonna say I've heard Roy Bean
And
before,
He
but
made, I don't know how they judged it, but he made the longest shot at that point was 45.90. It was 1,520 yards or something on an Indian on a kill on that
good
trip.
grief, good grief, huh?